This morning we have a special live read, and I'm going to tell you why it's special at the end of the live read. And it is, whatchamacallit, this particular genre is from one of the polls on one of my previous live reads, and the genre is fantasy, which admittedly, I have not read a whole lot of fantasy books. And I can't say why that is, because I hold, the whole premise of fantasy is something that I definitely would dive into. But this is probably my third or fourth fantasy book, which is not too many considering how many action, suspense, horror, and even romance books I've read. So, the Pyromancers Scroll by Jeremy P. Madsen. This book was really cool, aside from the very cool artwork on the, what do you call that, the cover. But I, of course, did not have the, book format, but it has a glossary. This is the first time I've read a book with a glossary. And I'm sure it's very common with fantasy books because there's a lot of terms and whatnot. First time I read a book with a glossary in several years, so I was pretty excited about that. Actually, now I think back about as far as glossary goes, it's probably been a couple decades. So, anyway, here we go. Prologue: The Pyromancer. When killing kings and sparking wars, Archivius preferred wait till midfall. Wow. Preferred wait till nightfall, but late afternoon would work in a pinch. The archdemon stalked down the cobblestone streets, invisible to the riffraff around him. Yes, he had caused the death of at least a dozen kings in his long and nefarious career. And the wars? He had stopped counting. They were so pathetically easy to spark. Aggressive leaders, resource scarcity, and what have you. It usually doesn't take much to bathe swords in blood. Today's war, however, was proving stubborn. Archivius prowled around the edge of a crowded marketplace, keeping to the long shadows cast by the setting sun. He passed straight through the carts and wagons on his way. They posed no obstacle. They existed only in physical plane, while he inhabited the unseen plane. Emotions swirled around him, flowing to his senses from each mortal he passed. There were the usual ones: stress, desire, hunger, boredom, but today, bubbling under the surface, he felt apprehension. People were lingering in the streets a little longer than usual, despite the setting sun. Whispers flew that the king was about to issue a fateful decree. He smirked. Today's news would be far from fateful when any of them anticipated. One strand of emotion stood out from the rest. Blazing ambition, focused to a keen point and tipped with fury. It emanated from the figure that Archivius was shadowing, a tall human in a scarlet cloak. The human had nearly reached the end of the market, 24 yards ahead. Confounded it, that pyromancer was fast. Archivius opened his wings and launched into the air, flapping heavily like an enormous vulture bat with horns. A screech of pain escaped his fangs as his full wingspan was scorched by the sunlight. The sun's ray, to Archivius' perpetual annoyance, fully inhabited both the physical and the unseen plane. As soon as Archivius caught up to the human, he snapped his wings closed, and he retreated to the shadows. You'd think I'd get a little cloud cover, Archivius grumbled to himself. It's not like I'm at the climax of a 7-decade masterpiece of geopolitical calamity or anything. Archivius' protege left the busy streets behind and began threading his way between large stone manors. Once away from the crowds, the human moved low to the ground at a near run, never pausing as he would through the maze of narrow streets. No need to go so fast, Archivius growled, bending his will upon the human's thoughts. There's nothing to lose by striking after nightfall. He knew an echo of his suggestion reached the man's mind, but the human only glanced at the position of the sun in the sky and redoubled his pace. Archivius rolled his eyes, cursed these mortals and their incontently correct superstitions. After a few minutes, they passed into the shade of the palace Acropolis, at last. The human accelerated toward the last house in his way. Thrill radiated from the man's heart as he leapt 15 feet into the air, clearing the wall easily. Traces of fire flashed in his wake. The manor's roof adjoined the rocky hill that supported the palace. Up this slope the man climbed, moving with speed beyond any normal ability. His scabbard rapped against the rocks as he sprang from the ledge to ledge. Archivius took to the air again, keeping to the hills shadowed. He breathed deeply, drinking in the man's intoxicating emotions. A clarion voice interrupted his sadistic glee. You have no place here, demon. That intro is really cool. Profound statement, right? It was really cool. No, it really was, but for multiple reasons. So the author Jeremy P. Madsen, and I do give this one 5 stars, or did I give it 4 stars? I can't remember. It'll be down there. I really liked it. The whole deal overall. Jeremy P. Madsen, the author, he has what's called a clean guarantee in the front of this particular book. I'm assuming other books, as this is part of a series. And you really can't tell, and it's true. The story is very clean. There's no gore, there's no cursing, there's no elements like that. But it has tones of darkness, and it has tones of excitement. You name it. It's a story that doesn't lack anything, and that is a very powerful tool as a writer. And reading the story, it really helps because first of all, the book is intended for a younger audience. But you can read it, kind of like the same, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like how, geez, now I can't remember the series, one of the biggest series ever, the Harry Potter series. That for all intents and purposes, that was a really, really clean write. Each book was very good and everything. And, just because it's fantasy doesn't make it Harry Potter, but Jeremy P. Madsen does a really, really good job setting the tone without any bad stuff. It's really good. I definitely appreciated that, because not to say I don't like reading the bad stuff, but the reality is when you can do it, get your point across, get your story across in a really, really clean fashion, very powerful. So I was really, really impressed by this read, and I'll go ahead and dive into more by the author. So the Pyromancers Scroll, 5 stars. This read a must. Definitely a good book. I'm into the first 100 pages, so I will put that caveat. I have not finished it yet, but definitely looking forward to the rest of it. So if you have any other fantasy suggestions for a read, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We'll see you next time.